Welcome to the Deep Dive, your shortcut to being well-informed. Today, we're taking a comprehensive look at the crucial current affairs you need to know. And this deep dive is tailored specifically for you, our dedicated UPSC aspirant. Think of this as your essential daily current affairs session for July 01, 2025, Part 1. We'll be covering a range of topics. Some might be good for a quick revision, while others will probably offer some fresh insights.
Exactly. We're here to pull out the most important bits of knowledge, helping you understand not just what happened, but really why it matters. Connecting the dots, across public health, environment, governance, getting you that analytical edge. What stands out to you as we kick things off?
Okay, let's dive straight in then. There's some pretty incredible news right from the start, these recent UN reports, highlighting India's remarkable strides in maternal and child health. Yeah, our sources point to findings from the Trends in Maternal Mortality 2000 to 2023 and Levels and Trends in Child Mortality 2024 reports. Both from UN interagency groups, they really paint a compelling picture.
And what's fascinating here really is the sheer scale of the achievements. We're seeing a significant drop in zero-dose children. Those are the kids who didn't get their first DTP vaccine dose. That number fell from 0.11% in 2023 down to just 0.06% in 2024. That's percent of the total population.
Wow, that's a sharp decline.
It is. And beyond that, India has shown an 86% decline in its maternal mortality ratio, the MMR, since 1990. Now compare that to the global reduction, which is 48%. Just for context, MMR is the number of maternal deaths per 100,000 live births.
86%, that's a huge leap. So what does this tell us about India's strategy, especially when you put it against those global trends?
Precisely. India's progress is, it's significantly outpacing the global average. And similarly, you look at the under 5 mortality rate, U5MR, that's seen a 78% decline versus 61% globally. And the neonatal mortality rate, NMR, a 70% decline compared to 54% globally. These aren't just numbers. I mean, these shifts show India's strategic focus on building a really robust primary healthcare system, especially that last mile delivery. It positions the country to really leverage a healthier, more productive population, the demographic dividend, for years to come. Plus, India's maintained its polio-free status since 2014. That's largely thanks to diligent national immunization days.
That really is a powerful statement about human capital. So how did this happen on the ground? I mean, what specific policies or programs were the real game changers here?
Well, a major driver undoubtedly is the Universal Immunization Program, the UIP. It provides free vaccination services every year to, get this, 2.9 crore pregnant women and 2.6 crore infants. It's massive. And crucially, its coverage has expanded significantly. It went from covering 6 vaccine-preventable diseases back in 2013 to 12 today. They've added new vaccines like the inactivated polio vaccine and the pneumococcal conjugate vaccine since 2014. Shows real commitment.
Okay, the UIP is clearly central. What else contributed?
Several other key initiatives played a vital role, too. There's the Zero-Dose Implementation Plan 2024, rolled out across 143 districts. Mission Indradhanush, launched back in 2014, that successfully vaccinated millions of children and pregnant women. Can't overstate its impact. And you have regular community outreach through village health and nutrition days. Consistency is key there. And on the tech side, the UW1 platform for digitally tracking immunization status, that's been important. Plus, IEC campaigns fighting vaccine hesitancy, all supported by that strong network of healthcare workers like AHAs and A&Ms on the ground. They've been absolutely crucial. It's a really holistic, multi-pronged approach.
That's a very clear picture of commitment. Okay, speaking of long-term vision, let's pivot now to another critical area, sustainable energy. There's an update on the National Bioenergy Programme.
Right. So just to start, bioenergy is basically a form of renewable energy. You get it by burning biomass fuel. And that biomass comes from organic stuff like harvest residues, crops, even organic waste, turning waste into, a valuable resource.
And the National Bioenergy Programme itself, that was launched in 2022, wasn't it? With a pretty substantial budget, our 15 crore over 2 phases. Phase 1 running until 2025-26. The main goal, as I understand it, is using surplus biomass, mostly from rural areas, for power. And that also means extra income for rural households. Seems like a win-win.
Exactly. It hits both environmental sustainability and economic upliftment. The program has 3 main components. First, the Waste-to-Energy program that supports projects making biogas, bio-CNG, power, or syngas from different kinds of waste. Second, the biomass program, that's for making briquettes or pellets, and also for non-bagasse-based cogeneration power plants. And third, the biogas program. This supports plants mainly for clean cooking fuel, small power needs, but also things like improved sanitation and women empowerment. Did you know biogas is mostly methane and co-Euro? About 95%.
Interesting. So these revised guidelines, how do they actually streamline things? What are the practical changes we're seeing?
Good question. For waste to energy, they've really simplified processes. It's easier for MSMEs to get approvals now. And the CFA dispersal, the financial assistance is better. 50% comes after the State Pollution Control Board gives consent, and the rest after the project hits 80% capacity. Makes cash flow easier.
Okay. And for the biomass program?
Similar simplification there. For briquette or pellet plants, you don't need clearance documents anymore. That removes a big hurdle. Plus, there's tech integration. Think IoT-based monitoring solutions. And critically, for pellet producers in the NCR region and the National Capital Region, there's now support specifically aimed at dealing with stubble burning, using an economic incentive to tackle a major environmental problem.
Okay, tackling stubble burning is huge. Now, staying with the environment but moving to something really cutting edge, Delhi is preparing for its first ever artificial rain through cloud seeding, led by IIT Kanpur. Sounds almost like science fiction.
It does sound futuristic, doesn't it? Artificial rain, or cloud seeding, it's a weather modification technique. The idea is to enhance rainfall from clouds that are already there, or might form. How it works is basically they disperse chemicals, things like silver iodide, potassium iodide, even dry ice into the sky, usually using airplanes. These chemicals act as nuclei, like tiny seeds, attracting water vapor and helping to form rain droplets or ice crystals, which then fall as rain or snow. There are two main types, broadly speaking. Hygroscopic seeding, which uses salts to attract water in warmer clouds, and glaciogenic seeding, using things like silver iodide in colder clouds to form ice crystals.
Right. And this has some pretty compelling benefits beyond just maybe washing pollutants out of the air in Delhi.
Oh, absolutely. It can significantly boost rainfall in drought-prone areas. You might have heard about the cloud seeding projects in places like Dubai, for instance. It can really support agriculture by providing rain during critical dry spells, potentially improving crop yields, farmer incomes. It can also help regulate weather conditions sometimes, maybe suppressing hail. And yes, for a city like Delhi, a key potential benefit is reducing air pollution by clearing pollutants and dust. But, and this is important, it does raise questions, concerns, really.
That makes sense. Any powerful technology needs careful consideration. What are the main worries?
Well, for one, if you see too much or in the wrong conditions, you could cause excessive rain, leading to floods or even landslides. There's also the concern that it might mess with natural weather patterns. Could it potentially cause droughts elsewhere by sort of stealing the moisture? That's debated, but it's a concern. And then there are the environmental and health risks from the chemicals themselves building up in the soil and water over time. What does that do to ecosystems, aquatic life? So, stepping back, the bigger picture is its use has to be guided very carefully by solid scientific research, strong environmental safeguards, and clear rules and regulations. It's a powerful tool, requires careful handling.
Definitely needs that balance. Okay, shifting again, but staying with environment and economy, these new model rules for felling of trees in agricultural land, they're aimed at promoting agroforestry. Seems like a smart way to blend farming and ecology.
It really is. Agroforestry, just for clarity, is basically growing trees and agricultural crops together on the same piece of land, or integrating trees with livestock. And India already has a decent amount of this going on. Agroforestry covers about 8.65% of India's total area. That's around 28.42 million hectares. The government uses a definition having over 10% tree cover on farmland counts as agroforestry for their calculations.
Right.
Covers various systems,
Right. And the goal of these new rules, as I understand it, is just to make the whole process simpler, encourage farmers to plant trees without getting tangled in red tape, making it easier to do the right thing, essentially.
Exactly. Simplify and encourage. A key part of these rules is the role of the existing state-level committee, the SLC. They'll oversee implementation and advise states on promoting agroforestry. Farmers who participate will need to register their plantation area in the National Timber Management System, providing land ownership details. And the process for felling is tiered. You need a permit if you have more than 10 trees on the land designated for agroforestry. But if it's 10 or fewer trees, you just need a no-objection certificate. So, simpler for smaller scale stuff.
Okay. And the benefits? What are the upsides here?
Multiple upsides. Environmentally, it helps increase tree cover outside traditional forest areas, promotes sustainable land use. And this aligns directly with India's climate commitments, the NDCs under the Paris Agreement. Economically, it's seen as a way to help double farmers' incomes, boost land productivity, improve soil health, conserves water. Trees provide additional products too. And socially, it can lead to better rural living standards through more sustained employment and hopefully higher incomes.
This whole agroforestry push isn't entirely new, though, is it? I seem to recall other initiatives.
No, you're right. It built on previous efforts. There was the National Agroforestry Policy back in 2014. There's the Submission on Agroforestry under the National Mission for Sustainable Agriculture, NMSA. And more recently, the GREW initiative by Niti Aayog, which is focused on greening India's wastelands, partly through agroforestry. Even that 2017 amendment to the Forest Act, the one that redefined bamboo as grass, not a tree, that was a big deal for agroforestry, making bamboo farming much easier logistically. So these rules fit into that broader trend.
Right, building momentum. Okay, let's delve into governance now. A significant move by the Election Commission of India, delisting 345 registered unrecognized political parties, or RUPPs. Sounds like the ECI is doing some housekeeping.
Yes, housekeeping is one way to put it. The ECI initiated this because these particular RUPPs failed to meet some basic conditions. Primarily, they hadn't contested a single election for the last 6 years, so since 2019. And crucially, when the ECI tried to verify their registered offices, they couldn't be physically located. They were essentially non-functional or perhaps even bogus. Delisting means they lose any benefits they might have had as RUPPs.
Okay, but it's important to make a distinction here, right? The ECI is delisting, not deregistering them, because they don't actually have the power to deregister under the current law, the Representation of the People Act, 1951. That was clarified in a Supreme Court case back in 2002, wasn't it? The Indian National Congress versus Institute of Social Welfare case. So given this limitation, how significant is this move? And what are the deeper concerns about these RUPPs?
That's a crucial distinction, yes. Delisting is the power the ECI currently has in this situation. But the concerns about these RUPPs are quite serious. First, there are major compliance issues. Many don't submit mandatory reports, like contribution reports detailing their donations. Then there are significant financial irregularities and worries about tax abuse. Get this. In just one financial year, 2019-20, 219 of these RUPPs claimed a whopping 608 crore in income tax exemptions. There are also allegations floating around about fake donation receipts, using shell companies, maybe money laundering. It's murky. And adding to that, the fact that 70% of RUPPs didn't even contest the 2019 general elections despite being registered, it really suggests many aren't genuine political entities, but might exist for other, less transparent reasons.
So what's the way forward then if deregistration isn't currently an option?
Well, there have been suggestions. The Law Commission, in its 255th report back in 2015, suggested amending the law to allow for automatic deregistration if parties don't contest elections for, say, 10 consecutive years. The ECI itself has asked for more power. In a 2016 memorandum, they proposed amending the Representation of the People Act to explicitly empower them to deregister political parties under certain conditions. So while delisting these 345 is a step using existing powers, the broader debate about giving the ECI stronger regulatory teeth continues.
Right, an ongoing issue. Okay, let's turn to a critical infrastructure development. The Ministry of Power has launched a task force to conceive something called the India Energy Stack. Sounds foundational.
It aims to be just that. The India Energy Stack, or IES, is envisioned as a digital public infrastructure, a DPI. Think of it like UPI for payments, but for the energy sector. It's meant to be a standardized, secure, open platform to manage, monitor, and importantly, innovate across the entire electricity value chain from generation to consumption. The goal is a unified, secure, interoperable digital backbone for India's energy sector.
Okay, DPI for energy. That's a helpful analogy. From a practical standpoint, you mentioned unique IDs and open APIs. How will those things actually transform how energy is managed, maybe even for the average consumer? What's the tangible impact?
That's where it gets really interesting. Unique IDs for consumers, but also for assets like transformers and even for transactions. This enables secure, real-time data sharing, but importantly, based on consent. The open APIs mean different systems can talk to each other seamlessly. This opens a door for innovation. For consumers, it could mean better access to their own data, more choices in energy providers or plans, maybe easier integration of rooftop solar or EVs. It empowers consumers, gives better market access for new solutions, and provides tools for innovation across the board. It's about using digital pathways to modernize the whole ecosystem.
From digital infrastructure now to something very tangible, a spice deeply rooted in Indian culture and economy, the National Turmeric Board.
Yes, the National Turmeric Board. It was notified back in October 2023, but officially inaugurated in January 2025. Its headquarters are in Nizamabad, Telangana, a major turmeric-growing region. Its main purpose is to provide leadership for the sector, boost existing efforts, and improve coordination with agencies like the Spices Board and others involved in turmeric. Its focus on the overall development and growth of the turmeric sector in India. And that's significant because India is huge in turmeric. We're the largest producer, the largest consumer, and the largest exporter globally. We account for about 70% of global production and over 62% of the world trade in turmeric. So the board's role covers everything from promoting R&D, quality standards, value addition for exports, to even raising awareness about turmeric's health benefits and improving the supply chain.
Right, a strategic focus on a key agricultural export. And speaking of economic impact, let's quickly touch on remittances, always a huge factor for India's external finances.
Absolutely huge. A recent RBI report highlighted this again. Remittances to India hit an astonishing $135.46 billion in the financial year 2024-25. That's a 14% jump from the previous year. And it's more than double the $61 billion figure from back in 2016-17. Incredible growth.
Where does that fit in the overall economic picture?
Well, these remittances accounted for over 10% of India's total gross current account inflows, which were around $1 trillion. And perhaps even more critically, they covered about 47%, nearly half, of India's merchandise trade deficit. They act as a remarkably stable source of external financing. In fact, gross remittances coming in actually surpassed the gross inward foreign direct investment, FDI. So, yeah, incredibly important for India's balance of payments and overall economic stability.
Okay, staggering numbers there. Now let's round out our deep dive with a quicker run through some fascinating updates. Science, biodiversity, global connections. Some of these might be good for a quick revision for you.
Sounds good. First up, something from the world of fungi. Researchers have found that botrytis fungi, you might know it as noble rot. When it affects grapes for dessert wines, well, turns out it can't be cloned in the usual sense. Why? Because no single nucleus in the fungus contains a complete set of chromosomes. The full set is actually distributed across 2 or more nuclei within the same cell. These are Ascomycetes fungi, by the way. This finding kind of challenges basic assumptions about genetics in these organisms.
Ah, interesting. Okay. In wildlife news, the hole, also known as the Asiatic wild dog, it was thought to be locally extinct in parts of Assam, but there's been a confirmed comeback in the Kaziranga-Karbi-Anglong landscape. Good news, but its conservation status is still IUCN endangered. It's also listed under Schedule 2 of India's Wildlife Protection Act 1972 and Appendix 2 of CITES, so still very much a species of concern.
Definitely. Now, pollution. A study by the Center for Research on Energy and Clean Air, or CREA, found that secondary pollutants account for nearly 1/3 of India's PM2.5 pollution. Remember, secondary pollutants aren't emitted directly. They form in the atmosphere through chemical reactions between primary pollutants like SO2 or NOx or other atmospheric components. Ozone at ground level and sulfuric acid-forming acid rain are key examples. It highlights that tackling sources isn't the only part of the air pollution puzzle.
Right, atmospheric chemistry matters. Then there's this groundbreaking project, the Synthetic Human Genome Project, or SynHG. Researchers are literally trying to build human genetic material from scratch, not modifying, but building. The aim is to learn more about how DNA actually works, how genomes are organized. This multi-center project hopes to develop foundational tools to synthesize entire human genomes. The potential applications are huge: targeted cell therapies, maybe even designing climate-resilient plants. Still early days, but potentially transformative.
Absolutely. And heading out into space, the James Webb Space Telescope has made another cool discovery, its first new exoplanet, named TWA-7b. What's notable is that it's about 10 times lighter than any exoplanet that had previously been directly imaged. Remember, exoplanets are just planets orbiting stars other than our sun. Finding them, especially potentially habitable ones, is key in the search for life beyond Earth.
Very cool. Okay, a quick cultural note for you. Kolpuri chapels. These traditional handcrafted leather sandals from Maharashtra, they got geographical indication or GI status back in 2019. Their origins trace way back to the 12th century, a piece of living history recognized.
Indeed. And finally, a global connection point. Madagascar. It was recently in the news because India's Minister of State for Defense represented India at Madagascar's 65th Independence Day celebrations. Geographically, it's the 4th largest island in the world, located in the Indian Ocean off the coast of East Africa. It's a biodiversity hotspot, home to about 5% of the world's plant and animal species, and around 80% of those are endemic, found nowhere else. But what's particularly fascinating and relevant for your studies is Madagascar's crucial connection to the Indian monsoon. The southwest monsoon, which is vital for India, actually originates near Madagascar due to a high-pressure zone called the Mascarene High. So that island's climate dynamics have a direct impact right here.
Wow, what a deep dive indeed. We've really covered a lot of ground today, haven't we? From India's major health breakthroughs to cutting-edge energy policy, environmental tech, governance issues, and those fascinating scientific snippets.
Yeah, we really have. We hope this is giving you that shortcut to being well-informed, sparked some aha moments, and crucially, helped you connect the dots across all these diverse current affairs topics for your UPSC preparation.
So thinking about all this, what does it really mean for you as you prepare? I think it highlights just how interconnected everything is. Policy, the environment, science, the economy, society. It showcases India's progress on many fronts, but also the challenges that remain.
Exactly. Consider how these topics, which might seem separate at first glance, like the details of regulating political parties, and the atmospheric science linking Madagascar to the Indian monsoon, how they actually reflect India's complex, evolving role, both domestically and on the global stage. Maybe a final thought for you to ponder. As India advances in areas like health, technology, and energy, what new challenges and opportunities do these very advancements create for governance, for sustainability, and for our collective future? How might these shape the policy landscape you're studying?
That's a great question to reflect on. If you found this deep dive valuable, please do make sure to like and subscribe. Your support really helps us bring more of these insights directly to you. Thank you for joining us on the deep dive. We look forward to our next exploration with you.